Hi everyone, hope you're all keeping well. It's now time for our next lesson where we're going to be looking at graphing in Microsoft Excel for SQA physics courses. Just a quick disclaimer before we start, this is basically my interpretation of the SQA standards for producing a graph for the physics courses, and it is not in any way endorsed by the SQA. We just want to make sure that's clear before we begin. So let's have a quick look at our learning intention and success criteria for today. Learning intention: to learn how to plot a graph using Microsoft Excel for SQA physics courses. And our success criteria: I can produce a scatter graph in Microsoft Excel. And I can format my graph appropriately for SQA physics courses. Now, probably important to point out that this is going to be very similar formatting techniques you're going to use the whole way through. If you're doing National 3 Physics or if you're doing Advanced Higher Physics, the formatting techniques that we're going to be learning here are going to be the same no matter what level you are working at. There might be some extra information that you'd want to include in the kind of later courses, which we won't cover here, but the general formatting will be the same no matter whether you're doing National 3 Physics, National 4 Physics, National 5, Higher, or Advanced Higher Physics. It will be the same throughout. Okay, let's have a look at my screen and we will have a look and see just exactly how this works. So you want to make sure that you get yourself a copy of the data. Make sure you click the link below to download this data. That way you can follow along with the tutorial. You can try and reproduce the graph that I'm producing in here, and hopefully you'll come out with something which looks fairly similar to what I come out with at the end. The data here is for charge versus time, as you can see, and we've got time in one column and charge in the second column. You want to make sure you obviously get the Excel formatted data, so you'll know that it's Excel formatted because you'll see this extension here which says XLSX. That's how you know that it's in Excel format. Now, you'll see at the top here this box here which says open with Google Sheets. Now obviously we're working with we're working with Microsoft Excel, sorry, so we're going to not bother with this, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to this box here which says download. You'll see if I hover over it, it says download. It's going to be down arrow on it. You click on that there, and what that's going to do is that's going to download you a copy of this data that I've produced, so that you can follow along. It's important that you download a copy of this. You'll not be able to edit it on the website properly, or kind of save anything that you've done. So it's worthwhile downloading it and copying it, or downloading a copy for yourself so that you can follow along properly with this. So what you can do once you've downloaded it, I'm using Google Chrome. You'll see this box down at the bottom has appeared with the data. I can click on that and that will open it up. Alternatively, a couple of options. I can click this little arrow here and I can show me in the folder, so I can bring up my downloads folder here. This is where all my downloads go, and I can open it from here, or if I go back to the browser here, I can click on the three dots, click on downloads, and it will show up here as well. Now if you're using a different browser, obviously you need to go to wherever that browser saves your data to open this up, so I'll let you figure that one out for yourselves. That'll depend on what browser you're using. So if I were to click on that download now, I can bring up this data. So here we go, I've got my data here. Now the first thing you'll hopefully notice is that we have two charts here, two sheets, sorry. So we've got one, the straight line graph, and two, try it yourself. So we're going to be working with the one that's highlighted here, the straight line graph. This is the data that you could see before. This is charge versus time, and we have time in seconds in one column, and we have charge in coulombs in the second column. You'll see the try it yourself data. This is acceleration of a dropped ball, so this is a completely different set of data. So we've got time, and this time we've got change in speed in the second column. So I'll go back here. I'm not going to do anything with this try it yourself data. This is for you to try it yourself after we've completed this tutorial, so you can work through that yourself and hopefully reproduce this a second time with data by yourself. So anyway, we've got this data here, and we're going to want to produce ourselves a graph. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to highlight the data. Now you'll notice I've just highlighted the data. I haven't highlighted the column headings. I started at the first number and I've dragged down to the bottom here. I'll show you that again. So all I've done is I've just clicked my mouse and held, and I just drag down to the bottom here and let go of the mouse button once I get to the bottom, and that highlights all my data. Alternatively, you can click on this first column here, press shift on the keyboard, hold shift, and then click on this bottom one, and it will highlight all your data there. Now I want to insert a chart, so I'm going to click on Insert, and I'm going to go to Charts here, and I'm going to be clicking on this one here which says Insert Scatter XY or Bubble Chart. There is this option here for inserting a line or area chart. This isn't what we're going to use. We quite often consider that we are doing line graphs, but really actually what we're doing is a scatter graph in physics, because we use a line of best fit, whereas these graphs here will not use a line of best fit. You'll see from some of the previews kind of behind the menu here that this isn't what we're looking for, hopefully. So I'm just going to click on this to get rid of that. We're going to go back to this one. It's the very last one here, and it says Insert Scatter XY or Bubble Chart. So I'm going to click on that, and it brings up various options in here. I'm going to ignore the ones at the bottom where it has bubble chart here. We're going to look at these scatter chart ones. Now this first option is the one we're going to go for. The second one here has points and a curved line in the picture. The third one has just a curved line. Then we've got one that just has points and a straight line, and finally the last one just has the straight lines. Now these ones with the lines, either the curved or the straight lines, basically have lines which connect each of the points together, whether it's with a curve or whether it's with a straight line, and that's no use to what we're doing in physics. We always use a line of best fit which goes close to all the points but maybe not through all of the points. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just plot this first one here. So this is just a scatter chart without any lines, so I'm going to click on that here, and it's going to bring up my basic chart. So we've done the bulk of the work already, and nice and easy. We've got our chart, we've got our points plotted accurately, so this is all nice. I'm going to click first of all now, or next I'm going to click on this chart title, and I'm going to remove this. Now this is up to you whether you want to remove it. If you want to insert a meaningful title to your graph, that's absolutely fine. You're not going to cost you anything, so it's not going to cause you any problems. It's not required by SQA, so I'm going to get rid of it because I'm going to concentrate on purely what is required by SQA. So I've now got my graph here. I'm going to click on this plus arrow to add something to the graph. So I'm going to click on this plus, and it brings up a menu, and you'll see here axis titles. Now you'll see this arrow to the side here. I can add individual axis titles if I want, but that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on this box on the other side here, and that's going to add in both of my axis titles at the same time. I could go in here and I could add them individually. I could click on one and then come back in and click on the other, but it's easier just to click on this first one here. So let's get rid of this menu by clicking on the arrow again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this x-axis title, and remember your x-axis title just comes from the column at the top of this first column here. You want it to be exactly the same as what you've got in there. So in this case we've got time in seconds. Remember your units, you need to have your units both in your table and in your axis titles. If you don't have your units, it's going to cost you marks because we're not going to know what you're talking about. Now on to the y-axis, I'm just going to select that and delete the data there, and again this just comes directly from the second of the columns on the table. So this is charge in coulombs. So there we go, that's me. I've got my titles there, title on each axis, that's me ticked off one of the criteria. Now what I'd like to do is I would like to take these data points. I'm just going to click on any of the data points. So I can click on one of them and it's just going to highlight all the data points. And I'm going to click on it with my right mouse button, and I'm going to click on Format Data Series. It's this one at the bottom here. And that's going to bring up this bar at the side here. Now what I want to do is I want to click on the fill in line, so that's this little paint bucket icon, and I want to click on marker. Now you'll notice if I just click off of here for a second, this is going to change what's appearing here, but if you'll see these markers that have been used here, so the points are plotted with these big circles. SQA don't like that, so we're going to try and replace these with something that SQA will like. So we're going to go back into I just clicked on the data point there again, just any of the data points. Make sure that the little paint bucket there, the fill in line, is selected, and again click on marker, and you'll see marker options. So if you click on the arrow next to marker options, and it brings up some selections here. Currently it's set to automatic. You can set it to none, but that gets rid of the markers or the points altogether, which we don't want to do. Or you can use some built-in options. So if I click on the built-in options, and then I just click this arrow here next to type, and you'll see there's lots of different options to choose from. You've got a square, you've got a rectangle, sorry, you've got a square, you've got a diamond, you've got a triangle, you've got the circle that we had before. SQA don't like any of these. They want something which clearly shows where the centre of that point is. So we're going to use either, I'll leave this open to you, this cross here or this plus sign down here. So I'm going to go with the cross. So I'm going to click on the cross here, and the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to increase the size to size 8. Now if I click off of here, you'll see I've got some nice big crosses here, and the centre of those crosses are where each of these points are that we have plotted on this graph. So it makes it very easy to see exactly where those points are, rather than having a big circle and we're having to try and guess where the middle of that circle is to find out where the point is actually plotted. So we've got the points plotted nicely in a format that we want. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to the I'm going to click on this here. This is a grid line. You'll see it from the top. This is the major grid line. All I want to do here is I want to make this darker, just so it's nice and clear to see. So I'm going to click on this here. It's the one in the middle. There we go, and that makes these lines nice and dark. And I'm going to do the same with the ones coming across the way. So these are the grid lines as well coming across the way, major grid lines, and again it's just the one in the middle, same colour, just so that they're very clear, very easy to see. Now at this point we're going to need to add something else into our graph. So I'm going to click on this plus again, and I'm going to come down to grid lines. Now you'll see grid lines are already ticked. Basically what's already ticked are these major grid lines that we can see going up the way and across the way, that which correspond to each of these numbers along our axes. But if I click on this arrow to the side here, it gives me the option to add in primary, minor, horizontal, and primary, minor, vertical. So I am going to click on both of those, and you'll notice that we now have rather faint lines going up and across as well. So I'm going to, again, I just want to make sure that they're all nice and visible, so I'm going to click on one of those grid lines and I'll just highlight them all for me. I'm going to click on the colour over here, and you'll notice every time I click on something new here, this formatting box at the side changes to format, so I can format whatever it is I'm looking at. And rather than using the same colour, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over one. So I'm going to stay in the middle box, but I'm going to go move over to the left one, just so that these are a little bit more faint, so that you can easily distinguish which ones are the minor grid lines, so the ones in between the thick lines. So I'm going to do the same coming up the way here. So if I just click on any of these grid lines here, and I'm just going to choose exactly the same colour, so it's the one in the middle. There we go. So now these minor and major grid lines are very easy to see. So that makes it nice and easy to mark, and it makes it nice and easy to see exactly where each of these points are plotted. So we're doing well. We're getting there. We're almost there. A couple more things we're going to want to add to our graph though before we finish off. So I'm going to click on this add button, and I'm going to click on trend line down at the bottom. I'm going to go to trend line, click on this arrow, and I'm going to click on linear. Okay, and you'll notice if I just click on this plus sign to get rid of that menu again, that I now have this dotted line which follows this data. Now if I come back into here, if I just make sure that this is highlighted first of all, so make sure that the trend line's highlighted. You notice it's highlighted when it says format trend line, and I'm going to go to dash type, and I'm just going to click on dash type and make sure that that's the solid line, so that's the one at the top, and then I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller, so I'm going to bring it down to the width down to 1 point, just to make it a little bit thinner, the line. So you'll notice here that this trend line doesn't go through all the points. This is our line of best fit basically. So this is very useful. So it gives us a line of best fit which goes through most of our data points, but not quite all of them. But it does go very close to them all. So a couple more things that we can add if we want to at this stage. If I scroll down with the trend line still highlighted, now just sorry, if I click on this little graph box here, you see it looks a bit like a bar graph. It says trend line options. If I hover over it, click on here, and then you'll see lots of options, but we're going to scroll down to the bottom here. The first two options that you see here under forecast are quite useful, so you can forecast forward or you can forecast backwards. In our case, forecasting backwards might be useful. So this first point here is at 1, so I might want to forecast backwards to see just exactly what happens when it gets close to the origin. So I could put that I want this to forecast backwards by 1 point. So I click enter, and that will extend this line backwards. I can do the same going forwards if I want to. I could just change this to 1, and then that will show me what happens if we forecast forward. So that just follows that same trend line. So it's a bit like kind of taking it back to see if it's going to be a straight line that goes through the origin. That can be quite useful if you're looking to try and show that your data is directly proportional. So in this case, if we were looking to try and show that charge was directly proportional to time, this would be quite a useful thing to do. Now I'm just going to reset this back to 0, and I will reset this one back to 0 as well, so that it's just the data that we've got plotted here. Now the next one down says set intercept. Now what this basically allows you to do is artificially change where this line is going to cross the y-axis. Now in doing so, you're going to change the equation of this straight line, and basically it means that the line is no longer the best line of fit. If you artificially change this, it may be the case that it goes through the origin by itself, which is brilliant if you've got a set of data that's meant to do that and it does it. Quite often we end up with data that is slightly off. We'll have a look and see whether ours is in a wee second. But if you change this, if you change this artificially to go through the origin, then that's likely to cost you marks at some point. So I would recommend never ever touching this set intercept button here. Next one I'm going to suggest you put on is display the equation on the chart. Now what this does is this brings up an equation here, and then I'm going to just click on the one below that, display r squared value on the chart as well, and that brings up these two values. So I'm going to move these over a wee bit. So I'm just going to move these over, and there we go. I'll move that over there. A couple of things I'm going to do just to make this nice and easy to see. I'm going to click on the format at the top here, and then on shape fill, and then I'm just going to make the background here white. That's just the background of this little section here, which allows it to stand out. Now I want to make sure that when I've done that, that it's not going to be interfering with any of these data points here or the straight line, so I want to make sure that it's far enough away from there. Now the other thing I want to do is I'm going to make this just slightly bigger, so I'm going to click on home, and I'm going to go to font size here, and I'm going to set this to size 12, just so that it's nice and easy to read. Now you'll see here, if we look at our equation, this is our equation. If we compare it to the equation for a straight line, remember your equation for a straight line is y is equal to mx plus c. C is where it crosses the y-axis here. So you'll see it's not crossing the y-axis at exactly 0, but it's fairly close to 0, 0.0933. So that's not a bad set of data. It's almost directly proportional. It's not quite there, but it's fairly close to being directly proportional. You'll notice obviously here that y is charge and the x is time, so we could replace y with q, we could replace x with t, and hopefully then you'll start to think, you start to realise, well, if that's q equals something times t, is there an equation we know which follows that trend? Hopefully you came up with the equation q equals it, or charge is equal to current times time, in which case you would realise that this gradient, so that's the gradient of the line, this value m, if it's your equation of a straight line, is going to be your current. So in this case the current is going to be around about 2.1 amperes. So we have pretty much all the information that we need here. There's a couple of other things I would like to do just to kind of tidy my graph up and make sure that it's readable for anyone that's likely to be reading it. So what I would like to do next is I'd like to just click on any of these numbers on the y-axis here, and I'm just going to make this font a little bit bigger to make sure that it's readable when it's printed out. So remember, if you're doing this for instance, for an assignment at SQA, the assignments tend to be sent out to the markers to be marked, so they tend to have the original version, but it is worthwhile making sure that it is the best possible format that you can. Make sure that everything is big enough, because you don't want someone to be struggling to read something and costing you marks, not because you've missed something, but because they just haven't been able to read it properly. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do the same for the axis titles. I've just made them 12 point there, you'll notice as well. One last thing, I'm going to click on any of these numbers again, or going along here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the little paint bucket icon here again. So this is fill and line, and I'm going to click on the colour, and I'm just going to make that black. So I'm going to click on black up at the top here, and then I'm going to do the same, click on the y-axis, any number on the y-axis. I'm going to make sure that this says format axis, and I'm going to change this to black, and there we go. That's us. We've pretty much got our graph. We can now just select anywhere in this graph. So if I just click anywhere in here, or if I click on one of the blank areas is probably better, then press Control and C on my keyboard, then I could go to a Word document. So if I go to a blank Word document here, and I do Control and V at the same time, then what that's going to do is that's going to bring my graph over. And what I can do then is I can click on here, I can resize my graph if I want to. If I want to make it bigger or smaller, I can center it on the page. If I click this button here, if I want it to sit not in line with text, there we go, we click on wrap text and I can choose any of these options here. Quite often I like to put these kind of things in front of text, and then I can move them about freely, and then I can have text formatted around about it. But it's up to you how you want to format obviously your final document at that point in time. So that's us, we've got our graph. One last thing that I would tend to do at this point, just before it comes to printing, because quite often printing ends up being in black and white. If I click my trend line here, again it brings up the trend line options here. I can do this in Excel or I can do it in Word. I'm just going to change the trend line to black, and I'm going to click on again any of the data points and just make sure that it says format data series, and this time I'm going to go to the I'm going to click on marker again, and I'm going to scroll down, so under where it says border, I'm going to go to color and I'm going to click on black, and that way I will see exactly what my graph will look like in black and white once it's printed out. And at this point you might want to make some slight adjustments just if it's not going to look clear enough once it's printed. So that's you. You've got a printed graph, or you've got a graph that you can now print out. You can add it into your project. You can do your project or your assignment, whatever you're looking to use this for. And this graph is now formatted to SQA standards. You would get the maximum number of marks available for this. Okay, so let's go back and have, or before we go back and have a look at a little look at the success criteria again, I just want to go back to the Excel sheet. At this point you may want to pause the video, go away, try and do that with this second set of data. Now I'm not going to plot, or I'm not going to show you what this should look like, so do have a go at this yourself, see if you come up with something which roughly matches what we've came up with here. You can use colours, you can change the colours of the lines. I've kind of shown you how to change it to black, but you can change it to any of the other colours you want. It's completely up to you what colour scheme you want to use for your points and your line of best fit. You're not going to lose marks for using different colours, or for using weird and wonderful colours, or whatever you want to do here. That's not important as long as it's clear. That's all that's important. You need to make sure that it's clear and that it's easy to read by the marker. Okay, so you have a go at that second set of data. Come back and have a look at the success criteria in our PowerPoint, and we'll have a look and see what that says. So let's have a look at our success criteria again. Hopefully you've managed to reproduce the graph that I was producing. So you've kind of worked along with me, you managed to reproduce that graph with the same data. Hopefully you've either reproduced or produced a second graph with this other set of data that I provided, or you're going to go away now and do that. It's quite important to make sure that you do have a go at that one by yourself, just to make sure that you fully understand everything that we've covered today. So can you do the following, or in other words, have you successfully reproduced the graph in the video? So I can produce a scatter graph in Microsoft Excel. I can format my graph appropriately for SQA physics courses. So if you've managed to do both of them, well done, give yourselves a pat in the back. If there's anything you're unsure about, do ask questions. That's why we're here to help, obviously. More than happy to give you as much help as you need. So do ask for any help that if you're unsure about anything with regards to any of these courses or any of these formatting techniques we've discussed today. In the meantime, you guys keep yourself safe. Hopefully we'll get to see each other soon. I'll see you later.